In a near-future Australia, one cop fights back against a ruthless biker gang. Listen as we talk about how difficult it is to show society crumbling, a guy named Toecutter who doesn't cut toes, and the word that's forever associated with the Hall of Justice. Then we find out if Mad Max stands the test of time.
Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? James says gladiator with a glut. Alan says as a father, blah blah. It's the test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Test of Time. My name is Mad Alan Noah, and joining me is Angry James Brief.
Yes, I'm very, very angry, Alan.
Aw. Oh, actually, maybe I should be Angry Alan, and you could be Jealous James? I'm just trying to think of alliteration. Jaded James?
No, that's kind of like, that'd be more like emo James.
You could be Emo James.
Giraffe James, because giraffes are super aggressive.
Then it's a G and a J. It's the same phonetic sound, but I think that's kind of a cheat.
Yeah.
All right, we'll workshop this. We will come back to it. How you doing, James?
I'm very well. We're talking about Mad Max today, and we're going to talk about the Mad Max trilogy over the next 2 weeks. We're not going to talk about Mad Max Fury Road, of course, because that came out within our 15 years. But we are doing the trilogy because Mad Max, or rather Furiosa, a Mad Max saga,
yes,
is coming out soon, which I think is a good title for the film, because you don't want to call it Mad Max Furiosa, because Mad Max is not in this film. I don't believe he is, because I think he meets Furiosa in Fury Road.
I think so, and this is a prequel, I think. That movie comes out the same day as this podcast episode.
Yeah, I also think it's a good idea that they didn't call it Furiosa, because as popular a film as Fury Road was, I don't think necessarily that just the name Furiosa is as big of a draw. And also, it's not Charlize Theron, it's Anna Joy Taylor. So,
Anya Taylor-Joy?
Anya Taylor-Joy. Sorry.
You were pretty close. You got
close.
Most of the words there. You changed it.
In the wrong order, yes. And now we got to say it twice. So,
there you go.
More promotion for her movie. But, speaking of first films in a franchise, well, it's not exactly the first film in a franchise, but recently it was a little story that kind of went under the radar, but Disney re-released Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, in theaters recently. It came in number 2. It was the weekend that the Fall Guy came out, and 25 years after it was released, controversial reception at best, even though it was a blockbuster success. I feel like history has been kinder to Episode 1.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that the movie came in number 2 at the box office is kind of surprising, especially because, not literally, but everyone has Disney Plus. Like, if you wanted to watch The Phantom Menace because, hey, it's 25 years old, for a lot of people, you could do that at home. Or if you don't have Disney Plus, you probably have a buddy or a friend or a cousin or someone who has Disney Plus, and you could, say, hey, let's watch The Phantom Menace. I'll bring the popcorn or the Cheetos or whatever. Like, it's not hard to access. So the fact that it did that well just because it was playing on the big screen, I think is a little surprising, just, in the world that we live in now, when if it's streaming, do I have to go to a movie theater? But I guess it shows that people want to see the pod race on the big screen.
I mean, that's exactly what we've talked about in recent weeks, that if you want to get butts in the theater, there has to be a reason for it.
Right.
And a Star Wars film is a reason.
Sure.
And, about 10 years ago, kind of very quietly, there were plans to re-release all the Star Wars films in 3D.
They did.
Yes.
It started with Phantom Menace.
Exactly. And they did with Phantom Menace, and then Disney bought it, and then they canceled that.
Right.
But I remember the 3D upgrade. It actually did pretty well also. And And I felt like when that came out, it was a little bit before the tide was turning a little bit. And two major ways people have been a lot nicer to the prequels is separating the anger of a character versus the actor. Famously, people were horribly mean to Ahmed Best, who played Jar Jar Binks, and apparently was suicidal. And then Jake Lloyd, the boy who played the Anakin Skywalker, he became schizophrenic, and you don't catch schizophrenia. It's not that the bullying online caused this young man to get schizophrenia, but it certainly didn't help that this kid was tormented, and I think he did not have a good childhood after the release of The Phantom Menace.
Yeah, but there was something I read not that long ago that his mom wrote that really was defending the movie and Jake Lloyd's experience, where, yeah, there were some kids who were mean to him, but that he was super proud of the fact that he was Anakin Skywalker, that he was in this movie. He, to this day, is still proud of it. And yeah, there was some bad shit that went on, but that by and large, if I'm remembering this article right, it was a positive thing for him. And she said, I'm grateful, he's grateful. Yes, he has this mental health problem, but it had nothing to do with the movie, and it sucks, and it's a shame, and it's not what we were hoping for. But no, Star Wars was a positive thing for us.
And that's nice to hear from his mother, but the online community was not kind to Jake Lloyd.
Sure.
Episode 1, looking back on it, is some of the best things in the franchise. Duel of the Fates. You got Darth Maul, who's fantastic. Ewan McGregor, everyone loves him. The lightsaber battle at the end, fantastic. It definitely has more vocal love than it used to have.
This is true. But let's talk about Mad Max. I had never seen this movie. I'd never seen any of the original Mad Max movies. The only one that I had seen before watching Mad Max the other day for this podcast was Mad Max: Fury Road. To be honest, when that movie came out in 2015, I wasn't interested. I did go and see that movie eventually because everyone was talking about it, that it was an unbelievable spectacle and you've got to see it, and it's an edge of your seat thrill ride, and it's a 2-hour car chase scene, and I don't even like car chase scenes, but this is really fucking good. So I did see it, and I don't remember every last detail of it, but I remember enjoying it. I remember being impressed by it, and I was kind of expecting in this movie, the original Mad Max, I was expecting, an earlier version of that. Yeah. A more primitive, less special effects, because it's 40 years earlier or whatever it is. I was pretty fucking surprised by the movie I saw.
Yeah, absolutely. I knew that you hadn't seen the film, so I was expecting you to expect a low budget Mad Max Fury Road, and that you will notice is next week's film.
Okay.
That's Mad Max 2 called The Road Warrior. But this film, Mad Max, is an action film that follows Max Rockatansky, a police officer in a not quite post-apocalyptic, but towards the end, the breakdown of society, Australia, where society is crumbling and gangs dominate the highways. After a deadly encounter with a savage motorcycle gang leads to the loss of his family, Max becomes a hardened avenger. Driven by grief and rage, he sets out in his supercharged V8 Pursuit Special to exact revenge.
Right. And this movie came out in 1979, just like us.
Yeah, it came. There's different release dates. It was released in the States in 1980. It had a very low budget, $350,000. Did you read about where the budget came from?
Yeah, George Miller is, he's like you, James. He's a doctor.
He's a medical doctor. I had no idea. Yeah, he's an emergency room doctor. And apparently he just saved up the money to do this. Most of the extras in the film were apparently paid in beer. Mel Gibson, he got $10,000 for the film. And this film earned more than $100 million worldwide in gross revenue. And for almost 20 years, it had the highest box office to budget ratio of any motion picture. Do you know what film later wound up having an even bigger box office to a budget ratio?
The only thing I can possibly guess is the Blair Witch Project.
Yeah, that's right. So
Okay.
Mad Max also opened up the Australian film market to the rest of the world. So you wouldn't have had Yahoo Serious Films without Mad Max. That is a niche reference there. But you honestly might not have had even the interest in, say, a Crocodile Dundee film, because this film did open it up.
Right, right. And after I watched it, I was like, how? How did this movie do that well at the box office? How did this movie spawn this franchise that is still going strong 45 years later? I really had a hard time just understanding like how anyone could see this movie and think, "Oh yeah, I want to see more adventures of this guy," because it's paper thin, the plot.
Well, I could tell you what are two films that were runaway hits that we have reviewed recently on this podcast. They're not the same genre, but there's a very, very similar item in all three of these films. And this was the number 2 film of 1977 after Star Wars. And it was in the top 10 of 1980 or 82 or something. Both starring Mr. Burt Reynolds.
Oh, like Smokey and the Bandit and Cannonball Run?
Right. And what does that have in common with this film? One word.
Driving?
Right, exactly, a car. You know, when you look at something like Star Wars, why was it such a runaway success in 1977? Because nobody had ever seen anything like this. Toy Story 1, it's a great film, but why was it such a big success? Because no one had ever seen a full-length computer film, and people were just wowed by it. And that's exactly what it was. It was a car movie. No one had seen a violent thing like this. There was a movie in the 70s that was kind of a cult classic called Death Race 2000.
Yeah.
I just think to see something very violent, and this film is violent. And some stuff happens kind of off camera, some of the more violent and gross things, but, it's one of those things that goes there. There's kids that die, and there's limbs blown off, and it's a pretty violent film.
I get it, but I mean, cars, like that's it. And the violence, there's not a very high body count in this movie, because a lot of the characters that you think die, or at least that I thought died, aren't actually dead. Like the good cop Goose, which is kind of funny because I hear Goose and I think of Top Gun, but that guy dies with air quotes like 6 times, and as far as I know, he lives. At the end of the movie, he's still alive. He's in a hospital bed, and he's in a coma or whatever, and he's very badly burned, but he doesn't die. Max's wife doesn't die. Their kid dies. You don't see the kid die. You really don't see many people die because of the super low budget, because of what they were working with. But even Toecutter, when he dies, you just kind of see like a close-up of his face and then an explosion. Like, the violence in this movie is there, but it's mostly implied.
Oh, yeah. I had seen this film exactly one time. And the only thing I remember in this film was the very end, which I thought was so cool. Max gets one of the bad guys that is responsible for killing his kid. And I think it's a really cool thing. The bad guy is right beside a car wreck that's leaking gasoline, and Max handcuffs his ankle to the car and sets kind of like a timer fuse with a candle that's going to blow up in a few minutes or something. He hands him a hacksaw and says, "It'll take you 10 minutes to hack through that saw with this, through the actual handcuffs. But if you're quick, you might be able to hack your ankle off and get out of it." It's a great premise. How badly do you want to be free? One of those 127 hours kind of situations. Of course, this happens off screen. You don't know if the guy tries to hack his leg off. Presumably he doesn't, and he dies. But it's off screen, but it's just still very violent and cool.
It's violent. I didn't think it was cool at all. This character, Johnny the Boy, is very, very clearly mentally unwell. They call it out in the movie. He is released from prison because there is still some society there, kind of not. Like, there's cops, but they don't have full control clearly. But they have some rules, and they let this guy go because no one showed up as a witness in his trial, and he's clearly not okay. You see it. You see it in every scene with him and Toecutter. Toecutter is the bad guy. He is the big bad. He is the evil villain. You want Max to kill Toecutter. Toecutter killed his kid and gravely injured his wife. But this other guy, Johnny, he's just kind of some lackey. He fell in with Toecutter because he doesn't know any better. And then Max is torturing him, like psychologically torturing him at the end. And I found that really off-putting. And I do also think from a test of time perspective, that shit wouldn't fly today. I think if you had an anti-hero good guy who's also kind of a bad guy in a modern movie, maybe he catches this guy, Johnny, and he beats him up, and then he's gonna kill him, but then he sees that this guy is just not all there, and he says, "You're not worth it." Maybe he leaves him by the side of the road for another gang to kill him. Maybe he brings him back to jail. Maybe he throws him in an asylum. Something. But blowing him up, telling him to hack off his leg, I was like, what the fuck? This is shitty.
Like I said, I remembered the final scene. I was certain that it was the other guy, the guy with the feathered hair.
Toecutter.
Toecutter. Yeah, I assumed it was him that was going to be, that would be kind of his comeuppance.
Well, that would make more sense that he would be the last kill.
Right. I was surprised when I saw Toecutter die. I was like, I guess he's not the guy at the end. I was questioning, did Johnny like specifically run over the kid or something?
No.
They don't show who ran over the kid. It was all of them. But they don't call him Mad Max. It's not like he's one of the cops and like, oh, we're getting Mad Max on this one. No, he's just Max. And then later he just goes insane. It's a vengeance story.
Sure. I felt like it was also anticlimactic because he had already killed Toecutter. Also, by the way, speaking of violence that happens off screen, I mean, the guy's name is Toecutter. We don't see him cut off a single toe. I mean, they could have done some cheesy, low-budget, late 70s effects of a toe being hacked off, and that's why they call him Toecutter, and I kind of kept waiting for that. But I want to go back to this thing about Max's family being attacked. Max is pretty fucking careless with his wife and kid, because after Goose is attacked, he's like going to quit the police force, and he has this very dramatic scene with the leader of the cops, whose name is, I think, Fifi, who's like wearing a leather tie, but is also shirtless, and he's the head of the police precinct, and when they're having the, I'm going to quit, no you're not, we need you, but I can't stand the force kind of conversation that you see in a lot of movies, it's extra ridiculous because the guy's shirtless but wearing a tie. But anyway, then he goes off on vacation with his wife and kid. The car breaks down and they're in this semi kind of half apocalyptic hellscape. And the wife's like, I'm going to go for ice cream. See you later. And Max is like, okay, bye. Like, no. You don't let her out of your fucking sight. And that's not a sexist thing because he's the man and he has to protect her. He's a cop and she is not. You could very easily flip it, if she was a cop and the husband was not, and then he says, I'm going to go take the kid. No, you're not. You're not going to go get ice cream. You're going to sit here and wait for the fucking car to be fixed. What are you talking about? And then she encounters Toecutter. Toecutter doesn't kill her. I thought Toecutter was going to kill her then. He harasses her and she knees him in the balls, and that pisses him off. Then they go to this other house, and, it's a family friend, I guess, and they're staying at the ranch, and then he's fixing the car, and then she says, I'm gonna go to the beach, and Max says, okay, bye. Like, why are you letting her out of your sight? You know there are bad guys on your trail, and he is very cavalier with letting her go off.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's kind of a montage when he leaves the forest. It might not be right afterwards. That's what I was thinking. There might be a time jump.
I suppose so.
Yeah, and then maybe you let your guard down. I kind of felt that a little bit, but then again, it's kind of the countryside, and you kind of figure maybe going down the street to get ice cream is okay.
Well, that brings up something that I was kind of confused about with this movie. This movie shows society crumbling. Not that society has crumbled or that it will crumble, but it's kind of halfway happening. I have to say, I think that was a mistake by George Miller, because he had such a low budget. I've never been to Australia, so I don't know. But I have to assume that if you were just going to go for post-apocalyptic hellscape desert, that would be pretty easy to film in Australia, I would think. You know, like drive away from the major cities for an hour or two. So why not just do that? Don't get me wrong. Society crumbling is, I think, more interesting, you know, from a narrative perspective. That's like a very interesting place to play in. But it's hard because is it that there are cops and law and order and good guys get the bad guys and put them in jail and you can go out for ice cream with your kid? Or there's roving gangs of motorcycle hooligans who will kill you and you're kind of on your own. It kind of can't be both, but if it is both, then you need to sort of address it, and I think the movie drops the ball there.
I agree, especially knowing how well the franchise will embrace the post-apocalyptic and kind of the fun that you could have with a lawless anarchy society. I think the fact that the film uses a quote-unquote police force, there needs to be some kind of element of a society because, you know, in a Fury Road, police doesn't work. So,
right.
Yeah, no one's going to care that someone claims that they're an authority. So I agree with you that it should have either been a little bit more on the, you know, rumors of riots and rumors of like society breaking down, or a little bit more exposition about what's going on in Sydney.
Right.
Yeah, that might have been good. Yeah, and they do weirdly have some establishment shots of a city, a skyline. You remember what they call the police station?
Oh,
it's like the
I
Hall
forgot.
of Justice.
Yes, right.
I mean, that's straight out of like Super Friends or
yes,
like a comic book.
Exactly. And anytime I hear Hall of Justice, or even when I just saw it on the screen, all I could think of in my head was, meanwhile, at the Hall of Justice. That was the voiceover. Every time they showed that shot of the Hall of Justice, that was what the voiceover said. Meanwhile, Hall of Justice and Meanwhile are forever connected in my brain. Did you see the movie Civil War that just came out?
No, I haven't.
Okay, no spoilers, I promise. But that movie does a much, much, much better job of showing a society that is kind of falling apart, but kind of trying to hold it together, and sort of holding it together, but sort of not. And that's a fucking hard thing to do. That is really difficult. It's not fair to compare Civil War with Mad Max. Civil War is a movie that was made much later, had a much higher budget, even, you know, accounting for inflation and all of that. But if you've got a shoestring budget, I don't think you try that. You know, even a Handmaid's Tale, like when they do like the kind of flashbacks to society crumbling, I think that's really fascinating, but I just found it very confusing in this movie.
I completely see what you mean. And it reminds me of a film that, another trilogy that we had reviewed, the Rambo trilogy.
Right.
You know, when you think of Rambo today and, oh my God, he went all Rambo on their ass. Like, in some ways, you could say First Blood is a bad Rambo film. Rambo meaning what society today says a Rambo film is. Nobody dies in the film except for one accidental death in First Blood. And we're all thinking of Rambo 2. Sorry, Rambo : First Blood Part 2.
Right.
And Rambo 3 and, you know, all the subsequent films in the franchise. It's just that Mad Max is so in the zeitgeist that you can't help but be biased that wait, where's all the, you know, roving through the desert, and I guess where's the low budget version of this? Again, I don't know whether you're going to like the film, but you're going to be more satisfied of what you were expecting with next week's film.
You're right. I was expecting more of the Fury Road kind of landscape, but I think even just separating from that, I think this movie does fail at explaining what the world is, what is happening, and exposition is hard. Like building that world, that's tough. But if you're going to go for it, then I think you kind of have to explain the rules of this world. The movie tries that there are these cops and they're trying to maintain law and order, and it's really hard because there are these gangs and they are ruthless and they are vicious and they're killing cops and they're killing innocent people. Max has a line, I forget if it's to Fifi or Goose or his wife or someone, where he says, you know, the only thing that separates me from them is the badge. And okay, that's a trope, that the good guys are just like the bad guys, and how can you even tell the difference? But I think that's maybe interesting, except that no, the good guys have this rule where they have to let Johnny the boy go. So clearly there are these rules that they are following, and that does separate them from the gang members. So there's stuff there. There's meat on the bone, that there's interesting stuff to explore, and the movie doesn't want to explore that. The movie wants to have car chases. And okay, fine. If you want to just do car chases, fine. But it annoys me that they left that stuff alone. They left all that meat on the bone. But whatever. Let's talk about the car chases. The car chases use a lot of sped up footage. And I get it. Again, small budget, 1979. This movie was edited in, I think, George Miller's friend's apartment, just on whatever equipment they could afford. The sped up footage never works for me. As a special effect, air quotes special effect, it always looks like shit, I think.
I'm not sure I know what you're referring to.
I mean, I don't remember exactly when in the movie it happens, but I think it happens a few times when the good guy is chasing the bad guy, and it's just very clearly that they speed up the footage to make it look like it is faster than it really was. Again, I understand the practicalities of it. I just think it always looks like shit.
Okay, I didn't quite notice it. I found the car chases to be kind of interesting. The only thing I didn't like is I didn't really like the Looney Tunes aspect of the fact that Goose kept getting into car crashes and kept living. And then they killed him, or rather made him horribly disfigured to the point that Max says, that monster in there is not Goose, which is... Wow, that's pretty mean to say to Goose, but
yeah, really. I hope he couldn't hear.
Right.
And I also was a bit confused about who Johnny was at first, like when he's captured, because they show like a couple that's in this town that a Toecutter and his gang attack the town, and then this one young guy grabs his girlfriend and says, we got to get out of here. And they speed off, which is like the stupidest fucking thing you could do in this world where the bad guys love car chases and going after people in a vehicle. That's like their number one hobby. So why would you fucking do that? Better to just lie down in the street and play dead. But they show later that Max and Goose rescue the girl from the car. And you don't see what happened to the guy. Presumably he was killed and tortured or something off screen. But at first when I saw that they grabbed Johnny from the scene, I was like, oh wait, is that a bad guy or is he the boyfriend? And he's the bad guy, but I couldn't really tell.
Yeah, I at first mixed him up and I thought they beat up the boyfriend so much that he was just talking gibberish. But I remembered he was wearing a different shirt, and so it didn't make sense. And also I was like, he doesn't look like he's beaten up.
I went back and rewound it, and then I saw that guy with Toecutter. I was like, okay, that was just my bad.
Well, once Max like roughs up the guy, I was like, I hope he's not the boyfriend.
Right.
Max is like dragging him, get over here, chump. But I was hoping for a payoff too of what happened to the guy, or maybe we both missed it.
Right. Yeah, it could be just a throwaway line of like, oh, we found his body a mile up the road. That's it. Maybe it was there. Maybe we missed it.
I do give George Miller credit for, he did go there, that a lot of films will not do. In this film, yeah, if you're gonna have a motivation to go from a cop to, I'm going to kill every single person in the most horrible way possible, it would be the gruesome death of your child. So a lot of films will not go there, and George Miller did. He went there and killed a kid, and a particularly cute kid too. But still, I was surprised. I thought he maybe would kill the wife, and then maybe the baby would be kind of in the questionable coma. But I'm pretty sure the wife is not in any of the other films, so I guess maybe they mention off screen.
I think in this movie they say something like, she's alive, but she's probably not going to make it, or something like that. Which is, still, then why bother? Just kill her off. I hear what you're saying, but to me, killing the kid, killing the wife is cheap. It's the obvious thing that you can do to this character to make him into the vigilante that you want him to be. Killing the wife, killing the kid, I don't know, it feels just easy. By the way, you didn't have to have it be a wife and the kid. Maybe he and Goose are best friends, and then Goose is so horribly disfigured that he goes after Toecutter because of that, because they killed his best friend, his partner, his lifelong companion. You don't have to make it be the wife and kid. That just feels icky to me.
I mean, I think it's a Bruce Wayne thing. I mean, it's the death of your parents, the death of your kid. I think absolutely makes him snap. It was fine for me. One thing we really haven't talked about much is, not anymore, but arguably for a couple years there, you could make the argument he was the number one movie star in the world. Mel Gibson. This is his debut film. His accent. Wow, that is a thick Australian accent, and he's almost indecipherable in this film. I mean, Max famously does not have a lot of dialogue in his films, but that is a very, very thick accent, and I liked it. I thought it was cool.
Mel Gibson is from America, but like he lived in Australia when he was young, I think.
I mean, he's known as being Australian. I mean, if you tell me the fact that he was born in America or something, but yeah, he's famously Australian.
Yeah, and this is his debut movie. I'm more used to him being more of like a middle-aged anti-Semite, and then like an older anti-Semite. But here in this movie, he is just a very, very young, baby-faced little anti-Semite. Look, I'm being a little cheeky about it, but this is episode 412 of the Test of Time podcast. This is the first time we have talked about a Mel Gibson movie.
Right.
It's not an accident that we've never done a Mel Gibson movie on the podcast. I despise him. And I felt like, okay, for Furiosa, fine. We'll go back and watch these movies. I know they're influential and whatever, and I'd never seen them, so fine. Maybe someday I will begrudgingly agree to watch the Lethal Weapon movies. I remember liking the first one. But, I do despise the man because he despises me and you and my family and your family and every other Jew that we know. And I could go on a 45-minute rant, and I promise I won't, about cancel culture. But like, in my mind, he's canceled to me personally, Alan Noah. I'm speaking only for myself, where I just fucking hate the guy. And I watched this movie on, I think it was on Max. I think Mad Max on Max. But whatever. Even just streaming this movie for the podcast, I worry a little bit if he gets a fraction of a fucking cent, because I don't want him to from me. It's hard for me. It's hard for me remembering that rant he went on, and I know he did some PR work and he apologized, but to me, he's just a piece of shit anti-Semite. So I don't have a lot of nice things to say about Mr. Mel Gibson, but you know what? That doesn't matter because he already hated me.
It's a legitimate question. You could find genuinely hysterical clips from The Cosby Show and
sure.
Bill Cosby stand-up, but certainly there are people that wouldn't be able to stomach that. Or you watch a film and you see Harvey Weinstein for a moment, and you're like, watching this, I paid for this on Amazon, great, I just gave Harvey Weinstein 4 cents.
Sure.
Can you enjoy their films ever again? Yeah, there's not a right or wrong answer. It certainly can affect people different ways.
Sure. It's very, very personal. It's funny that you bring up Cosby. Years ago, I was at a friend's house. Eli was hanging out with another kid, and while I was picking him up, just shooting the shit with the other dad, I saw that he had a box set of The Cosby Show. I think I just picked it up and I was like, The Cosby Show, huh? And he said, look, I hate that fucking guy. I despise everything that he's done. But I gotta tell you, when that show was on, I loved it. And watching The Cosby Show made me want to be a dad. So yeah, I saw this at in a bargain bin somewhere, and I bought it, and I love the show. And you know what? Fine, salute. That's his personal decision. No judgments, whatever. But let me ask you, James, about Mad Max. Do you think the movie stands the test of time?
Now, I had seen this film before, so I meant to ask you this. It was earlier this week, and I texted you, and I was like, Al, have you seen Mad Max yet? And you said yes. And I said, damn it, because I wanted you to do something. I meant to ask you. I wanted you to say, Al, write down 3 things that you expect to see in this film. And I wanted you to write chases through the desert and, the post-apocalyptic, something like that. And you wouldn't see any of that stuff. Just like if someone had never seen First Blood. And what's First Blood? Oh, it's the first Rambo film. Tell me what you think you're going to see. And someone's like, M16 mowing down 30 people. No, you're not going to see any of that. There's no explosions. I think there might be one explosion. But this film just has that indie feel to it. I like what George Miller did with this. I think it's kind of clever. You don't really need many sets, and you don't really need much in terms of plot to present what you need. This film is 90 minutes. That's a perfect length for this. The parts I actually really didn't like is kind of Act 2, that it slows down for a while, and Max is kind of happy with his family. I thought that went on too long. But for me, it's a small little film. It's not amazing. I actually kind of liked where it went. I love the ending. I really do like that hacksaw thing. I like the film. It's this is more to me a George Miller film than a Mel Gibson kind of action film. So I do think the film stands the test of time. What about you, Al? I know your feelings on Mel Gibson, but what about Mad Max?
So I'm going to go back to that text message that you sent me when you asked if I'd seen Mad Max. I thought that the reason you were asking me was because you had a reaction like I had, which was, hey, Al, did you watch Mad Max? And then I was going to say, yeah. And then you were going to say, that movie was fucking dog shit and I don't want to watch 2 more of them. To which I was going to reply, okay. And that's not the way that the text conversation went. And you know, it's not a spoiler. I already said we're going to watch the next 2. Fine, I'm signed up for it. But I finished this movie and I was really, really shocked at how much I hated it and how bad I thought it was and how boring it fucking was. I mean, I'm not the biggest car chase guy in the world anyway, and I think even well done car chases can be boring to me because, you know, okay, yeah, I get it. The cars are chasing each other. That can get old, but I was just so confused and bored and annoyed. I couldn't get into this movie at all. I started watching it with Eli. After about half an hour, he was like, can we turn on literally anything else? And I was like, yeah, sure. I can't blame you. I can't even say, but I bet it's going to get better, because I was not confident that it would. And then I did finish watching it on my own. And then I told him later, I was like, by the way, Eli, it didn't get any fucking better. Just so you know, you made the right call abandoning it. No, this movie's fucking terrible. It blows my mind that this movie spawned a franchise. It really genuinely does. That people saw this and were like, yes, more, please. Really? This fucking thing? I will never understand that. You did a good job of explaining it. I appreciate that you did. It just doesn't make logical sense to me.
I think people also kind of have a little bit of that thing of the independent film that comes out of nowhere that everyone's kind of talking about, My Big Fat Greek Wedding or Juno. And it's something exciting that people get excited about. Pulp Fiction back in the day. And I bet Mad Max is one of those, like, did you hear about that film that's playing not at that theater, but like go to a town over. They're playing this Australian film. It's super violent. Again, they hadn't seen it before.
It's like a hipster thing. Like it's cool to like these movies, and I get that, but it's a nothing burger. There's nothing in there that I can see why people would latch onto. So as its own thing, ignoring all the other stuff, no, this movie's terrible and it doesn't stand the test of time. But I signed up for the trilogy. I said I was going to watch all 3, so I will watch the next 2. I will watch next week's movie with an open mind. I will do my very best. I promise to do my best. By the way, I was looking it up. I need to do more research on what the official title is. Is it Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior? It has a lot of different titles in a lot of different regions, so I'm going to have to do a little bit more digging to figure out the official title. But I will have that sorted out next week. In the meantime, we want to hear from you guys. We are at Test of Time Pod on Facebook, X, Instagram, Threads. Write to us. Let us know your thoughts on Mad Max, this movie, Mad Max, the character, Mad Max, the franchise, Mel Gibson, the anti-Semite, also an alcoholic, by the way, alcoholic anti-Semite. And we will see you next time, everybody.
Take care.